everyone. Welcome to the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. Welcome to our museum bookshop. We are very pleased to have you here this morning for the launch of the most recent journal of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. As many of you know, the museum and the journal has been around for over 90 years now. We have the foremost authority in the English-speaking Caribbean on documenting Caribbean history and ephemera, and we are very pleased to hold that position. This morning, we are going to get right into it, so we're going to start with a few welcome remarks from our esteemed director, Alessandra Cummins.
Hi, good morning everyone, and an official Happy New Year from the Barbados Museum, because it's great to see your faces this year. Can I say this is a welcome from both me and the Deputy Director, who's here also, Kevin Farmer. And we are very pleased that we finally made it to print. We were a bit delayed, notwithstanding that, we were able to achieve the goal of publishing what one might call a bumper issue, and that is due to all of your contributions and commitments, both the writers, the editors, the copy editors, everybody. And indeed, we could not have done it without our sponsors also. So we are very, very grateful to them. What I wanted to say though is that the front cover of the journal speaks to another origin of both the journal and the museum over a long periods of time. Our two previous editors, Mr. Carl Watson, Dr. Carl Watson and Dr. Pedro Welch, are the key people that we want to remember, but we also pay tribute to two others, Mr. Trevor Marshall and Alison Chapman Andrews, a major artist. So can I say that if this journal was birthed out of quite a serious period of time, and I think one could understand why we want to dedicate it to their memory. I also want to say that we have long-standing relations and commitment with the University of the West Indies, many in different departments, entities, programs, and it is a special pleasure to continue to see that kind of relationship radiate through the pages of the journal. Well, that's all I'm going to say for now, but we're very pleased and proud to have the opportunity to produce this work. And now I'd like to hand over to Professor Alan Cobley, who stepped in and helped us make it happen.
I'm on top of this, is it all right? Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you very much to Alessandra for her remarks. It's a thrill to see so many people here, and we have some special guests. Of course, in the place of honor, we have Professor Emeritus Sir Woodville Marshall, who, as Alessandra said, has been associated with the museum over many, many years, and with the university. But we also have not Professor yet, Dr. Damien Cohort, who is Dean of the Faculty of Medical Sciences at Cave Hill. So welcome to him. I see a former student of mine. I won't call him. But I also want to welcome the contributors to the journal who are here. We have some special visitors, I believe, from Sylvester Manor and from the University of Massachusetts, Boston.
Yes.
They are here to do with the Constant and Carmichael project that you may have heard about. There's a conference that's been going on the last few days to do with that. And we have a bit of a connection to that in the journal as well. Let me tell you a bit about the journal. First of all, let me say it was a great honour to be asked by Alessandra and the chair of the Publications Committee, Dr. Carter, to take up the role of acting editor of the journal, following the passing of Professor Emeritus Pedro Welch in February of 2025. Of course, it was also a very daunting task. Pedro had held the position of editor with distinction since 2017, and he'd been preceded in that role by the renowned Barbadian historian, another renowned Barbadian historian, Dr. Carl Watson. And in fact, Dr. Watson was editor of the journal, I think, for 23 years, yes. 1993 to 2016. And by a sad quirk of fate, as you heard, we lost Carl just a few weeks earlier, before Pedro's passing in January of 2025. So we lost both of our previous editors in a short period of time. Now, both Pedro and Carl were friends and colleagues of mine, former colleagues of mine, and both made seminal contributions to the development of the journal in their time as editors, spanning that 30 years, that past 30 years. They sought to instill the highest possible standards of scholarship, and they also insisted on the highest possible standards of production for the journal. And by their selection of articles and contributors, they maintained the journal's identity as rooted in Barbadian history and the Barbadian community, while connecting with the wider international community and historical themes. So by this means, during their stewardship, they widened the reach of the journal to attract not only Barbadians, but regional and international scholars as contributors. At the same time, they grew the readership of the journal at home, while introducing the journal to a wider international audience abroad. So you can see why it was daunting to follow those two great editors. When I took over as acting editor, I saw it as my responsibility, therefore, to continue carrying the journal forward on the path they laid out. And I hope this 71st volume of the journal achieves that goal. Now, of course, Carl and Pedro were not the only renowned Barbadian historians we lost in 2025. Between the passing of these two icons, we also lost another renowned Barbadian historian, Trevor Marshall, the inimitable Trevor Marshall. Each in their own way made indelible contributions to historical understanding in this island. So we felt it was fitting that this issue, as Alessandra said, should document and celebrate their contributions. Each is remembered in articles penned by a friend and collaborator, and I thank Lennox Honeychurch, Tara Innes, and Marcia Burrows, respectively, for taking on that task for this journal. Now, as fate would have it, also in 2025, we lost one of the most renowned artists to emerge in Barbados in the last generation, in the person of Alison Chapman Andrews, who died in June of 2025. So her life and work is also remembered in this issue in a special tribute written by Alison Thompson. Now, aside from those pieces in memoriam, we thought it was important, as I've said, to continue the tradition developed by our two previous editors of publishing contributions in the journal that celebrate our Barbadian identity, heritage, and landscape, whilst also connecting to regional and global historical discourses. Accordingly, this issue of the journal has what I hope readers will find to be a highly stimulating and enjoyable mix of articles which combine historical perspectives and tell fascinating stories that move from the local to the global. Three of the articles illustrate the remarkable insight into family and community that can come from genealogical research in Barbados. So, for example, the article by Leah Bascom tells the story of Edith Kathleen Jemmett, Walter, and her family, set against the backdrop of old rock in Spice Town, St. Peter. By contrast, in his article on Sir Conrad Hunt, Martin Cox traces the successive generations of the renowned cricketers' families back to the era of chattel slavery in Barbados, so putting the Hunt's personal journey from poverty to global fame in a very remarkable context. Meanwhile, David O'Carroll's article illustrates the powerful links that can exist between place and family by tracing the history of the Dalkeith estate in St. Michael, right next door to us here at the museum, and its historic connections with his own family. Two articles in this volume point to gaps in our historical knowledge and understanding of Barbados. Emma Krieger and Mikey Duval present the findings of a survey of knowledge about pre-colonial heritage in Barbados. And it makes the case for the need for more effort to educate Barbadians about this often forgotten aspect of our history. The gap in our knowledge identified by Sir Woodville Marshall, who's with us, as I said, concerns the history of villages in Barbados, exemplified by the case of Foul Bay Village in St. Philip. His article is a clarion call for those with knowledge of the history of Foul Bay and other forgotten villages in Barbados to share it. And I should say at this point that, as many of you will know, Sir Woodville recently published his seminal work on villages in Barbados called Near a Plantation. I'm sure you can buy a copy here. We will be reviewing that in the next issue of our journal. And for those of you who don't know, if you want to know anything about any village in Barbados, Sir Woodville is the man for. Okay, so now in another very interesting article, which is very well illustrated as well, Hugh Holder and Vincent Jones describe the concept behind the winning design to replace the statue of Lord Nelson in what is now called Independence Square with the monument to the Barbadian family. Huh?
Hero Square.
Hero Square. I beg your pardon. Yeah, I'm thinking of the one across the Caribbean.
Yeah.
My mistake.
Many squares.
Yeah. Yes, Hero Square. You're quite right. Now, they also describe the concept behind their monument, and they also describe the process of construction, which is absolutely fascinating. And it was unveiled, as you may know, in November of 2023. Now, Seth Camill's article looks at the fascinating historical connections between Bridgetown and New York in the colonial era. And this is where that connection to Sylvester Manor and that particular history connection with New York comes in. He traces these connections back to their origins in the early colonial period, and he reflects on how this interaction impacted on the development of both these cities. Now, one of the significant developments in historical research in recent years has been the digitization of rare and fragile newspapers and other historical records, which are then made available by the internet through various online archives. Now, I have to register a little caveat here, which is that a number of those records, which are about Barbadians and relevant to Barbadians, are hidden behind paywalls. And that is a situation that I find challenging. It's something that we as historians, I think with the museum and with other interested parties, the government, we should be approaching the National Archives at Kew, we should be approaching the British newspaper archive and so on, and not asking, demanding access to part of cultural heritage. A number of things are available online, and we have an article which has the potential for exploiting those kinds of online resources by researchers and historical enthusiasts alike. And the potential of this research is demonstrated, therefore, by an article by Marcia Nurse, who is with us, I'm glad to see. And that article recounts two stories that illustrate aspects of life in Barbados in the early 19th century. Finally, we have a short article by Damien Cohall, Halcyon Wilkes Busby, Suzanne Archer, and Natalie Graves about the new Cecil Cyrus Caribbean Museum of Medical History. This is hosted by the UWI Faculty of Medical Sciences at the Errol Warren Clinical Skills Complex on Gerrards Lane. And it is an absolutely unique addition to the educational and cultural landscape of Barbados. I won't say more about it because Damien, I believe, will tell you a little bit about that. One of those things that you need to bear in mind now is that you don't just come to the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, which is your first port of call. You can now also go to the Medical Museum, Cecil Sarah Medical Museum, which is close by, so not far. Now, in addition to the tributes that I mentioned, the various articles I've mentioned, there are several book reviews in this issue of the journal, including a review of a book by our recently appointed President of Barbados, His Excellency the Most Honourable Lieutenant Colonel Geoffrey Bostic. Now, we didn't know he was going to be President when we put that review in, but it was a happenstance. But what I wanted to mention about that is that the journal is always interested in reviewing books about Barbados and by Barbadians to widen the perspective of our readership on what is available about our island and about our community. So if any of you have a book that you're sitting on that you would like to share with us for review, we'd be happy to have it. Now that's all I really wanted to say. I've gone on a bit long, but I have found the process of editing this journal enlightening, at times frustrating, at times very exciting, but I've learned a huge amount in the process. And one of the things I can certainly say I've taken away from it is an enhanced respect, an even greater respect for my predecessors as editor, and the effort that they put in to bring the journal up to the level that it is. I don't think, I'm speaking as acting editor now, but if I put that aside for a moment, I think you would be hard-pressed to find a higher quality museum journal in the region, or even more broad than the one that we have here in Barbados. And I want to congratulate the museum for the sustained effort over the many years to bring this journal to the public. I think actually it deserves a round of applause. And I'm sure it will continue to go from strength to strength. I want to thank all the people who participated in the process of producing the journal, of course, the contributors, some of whom are here, Alessandra Kay, who was the one who had to deal with all the complaints and frustrations and so forth. And she did all of that with great aplomb and diplomatic skill. So I thank her for that. The designer, articles I hope you will find interesting, and I hope you will buy a copy. So thank you very much.
To introduce myself earlier when I was welcoming everyone into the space. My name is Kay Hall. I am the Education and Community Outreach Officer. I frequently forget to do that. I've got one of these minds that goes bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and if I don't put introduce yourself at the top of the list, it does not happen. I live in my planner. That said, Professor Cobley's status as acting editor notwithstanding, I'm putting in my plug right now to keep him.
Yes, please.
It has been an absolute pleasure to work with him. He is punctual, he has great turnaround time. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, so I'd like to do it again.
Yes.
Anyway, at this time,
Yes,
definitely clap for that. At this time, what we want to do is we've pulled out 3 sets of authors from this year's journal. Each of the pieces has something of particular interest, which we thought would be interesting just for people to share what went into producing their article, and maybe a little bit about the content that made them think that the article was something that we would want to read about. They were all absolutely right. Each of the articles is fascinating in their own respect. I'm going to start with Sir Woodville, if you will, sir, who is going to tell us a little bit about his article. And he will be followed by Dr. Cohall, and then by the team, it's going to be waiting with bated breath for this one, who wrote the article on the creation of that monument, which is the latest addition to our reliquary in Barbados.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
And I will be as brief as I can be. I'm not sure that those who heard me in the past would recognize that, well, would accept that I'm always brief. But let me get to it. I take my little text for the remarks that I want to make from the last sentence of my piece in the journal. That last sentence really says that we in Barbados, would like to hear from all of our readers, about the history of the villages, about the history of villages in Barbados. For the reason that there's not a lot that has been written about villages in Barbados. Consequently, consequently, the folk wisdom, I won't say folk history, but the folk wisdom would in fact have to substitute for the absence of the record, the historical record. So that, therefore, I be in that article inviting people to come and tell us, and I will say just a little bit more about that in a minute, but come and tell us a little bit more so that we can more comprehensively write the social history of Barbados. Okay, that is where I will begin. Because when in fact I look at it, and I have been looking at it for some years, not very successfully, I suspect, but the record on villages and villagers in Barbados is on the meager side. It is on the meager side to a large extent because those who constructed the record didn't regard the mass of the people, who were mainly black, the mass of the people, as demanding our worth any serious, any serious commentary. So consequently, wherever you look, if you look, for example, at visitors' reports, if you look at planters' papers, you're not going to find a great deal about villages and villagers. The most that you will find in terms of a record is when you go back to births and baptisms, you know, the official, just the official record, marriages, wills, deeds, you will find some information there. But obviously, there is that those records are no substitute for extended commentary on people's lives, their achievements, their disappointments, contributions. Okay, so that is the reason that is the basic reason why therefore I'm making that particular statement in peace. I put it at the end, but I could even have put it at the beginning. We need the information in order to do it. And okay, and let me say why that information is important. It is important because if in fact if you look at the composition of this, call it society, what you will discover, certainly from by the end of the 18th century, that the mass of the population consisted of people who were really at the bottom of the social pool, and have remained at the bottom of the social pool. So that even when I get into the 20th century, 80%, 80% of our residents could be put there. So consequently, there's obviously a case for writing a social history which in fact devotes a portion of its content to those people. Okay, that is the important point that I want to emphasize. there's a gap. There's a gap certainly in the both in the historical writing and the historical record about these people. And it is like very important, therefore, if in fact we're going to talk about a social history of Barbados, a social history of Barbados, that in fact all the villages, whether in fact they're villages before slave emancipation or the villages after slave emancipation, that there is a common thread, an extended common thread. Because after all, history is not about just the great and the powerful, the movers and shakers. It's the society. History, at least social history as I define it, is about the contributions, the activities of all the total society. So consequently, therefore, we need the information if in fact we are going to write what is inclusive, fully inclusive history of our community. And I mean, and let me illustrate. Well, it's easy to illustrate from the size of the population. But one could also illustrate it by, if I take up the villagers point, if you look at the villages, if Barbados sees, and my little book on their plantation does point it out, Barbados does see an impressive growth in villages from the 1840s or the 1850s. And of course, there's a respected scholar who says there were no free villages in Barbados. It is basically an error. That's an error because obviously the particular historian didn't in fact do the research. Okay? Okay, I mean, and I'm not going to much because one needs to know how to search for it. Okay, but anyhow, a search would reveal that free villages, there were a large number of free villages. The point that I'm leading to is this: by the time you get into the 1920s, you have enough, you have as many free villages in Barbados as there are plantations. I mean, so, and the number is about 450. That is it. I mean, so what that means, therefore, it is obviously necessary that we should talk about these villages and these villagers who came on the scene. Not just how they came, because I think we can reconstruct that, but what did they do? What were their relationships with each other? What were their relationships with the wider society? So the reason, therefore, then, the basic reason then for inviting all of those who read what has been written is that we should in fact get into a position where in fact we can tell that story more comprehensively than we have done above. So I might conclude therefore these brief remarks by saying three things. One, we must deliberately build on the work that some students at Cave Hill have been doing over the years in Caribbean studies. In fact, I mean, and quite a few of those Caribbean studies were on villages of Barbados, okay? And the better ones were retained by the library, the better ones. Not all of them, but the better ones, okay? But anyway, so anyway, there should be some there which in fact we can use, okay? So that I'm saying. Second thing I'm saying is that we must give encouragement, as much encouragement as we can give. The individuals who are out there still doing the work. People like Bentley Gibbs. Bentley Gibbs, for example, is doing impressive work on a village in St. Peter called Roadview. So it's important that that support should be given to efforts of that sort. But thirdly, I would like to suggest that if in fact we accept, and I urge you to accept, that this is a large gap in our social history, then in fact a certain type of action is required. And that action is a research project, at least we can call it a research project, co-sponsored by the Department of History at the university and the Barbados Museum. Okay? And that small project could even lead to the creation of a small institute on village studies. Because it seems to me, and I hope that I'm convincing all of you, that since most of us, most of us come from villages, since such an important part, in my view, of the Barbadian past rests on what happened in the villages, we need, therefore, to ensure that that work is comprehensively done. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Now, it's extremely difficult to follow, the leads and acts of those who have spoken before, but I will try my best to do justice to the Faculty of Medical Sciences, University of West Indies, Cave-Hill's contribution to this very important new installment of the journal of this very famed Barbados Museum and Historic Society. So for persons here who may not have seen me or heard me prior, my name is Damien Kohal, Dean, Faculty of Medical Sciences, and I am part of that important legacy established at the Cave-Hill campus, the institution on the hill, right, the very prestigious institution of the University of West Indies, Cave-Hill. And of course, my predecessors, Sir Woodville, and of course, Professor Alan Cobley, would have essentially established that legacy of working collaboratively with the Barbados Museum and Historic Society. So the Faculty of Medical Sciences, we are not new. I can't boast that our collaboration is new with the Barbados Museum and Historic Society. It is a part of a very strong, impactful legacy between the University of West Indies and the Society leading up to today's launch of the newest installation of the journal. What I would like to say is to echo some of the sentiments mentioned by my predecessors as it relates to the Caribbean, and because we're speaking from this space in Barbados, but let's say Barbados, it is time now for us to reclaim a lot of our lost or stolen heritage. And the museum, which I will speak to, which is also captured quite nicely in the newest installation of the journal, is adding to that advocacy. And what do I mean by that? So coming from the medical faculty, and I'm quite sure a lot of you would have probably heard from more noted medical historians, even persons who may not have done a degree in medical history, but I've spoken about the history of medicine. So the likes of Sir Henry Fraser, who I quite sure a lot of you would have heard from television or probably interact with him personally. The Faculty of Medical Sciences, his contribution, his legacy, and other important artifacts of those and the Caribbean was considered to be sacred assets that needed to be created in a space. The collaboration with the Barbados Museum and Historic Society was one in which, through their knowledge and expertise, the Faculty of Medical Sciences was able to lean on them for guidance as we explored the development of the A.S. Cyrus Caribbean Museum of Medical History. And some of us here may be wondering, why the A.S. Cyrus Caribbean Museum of Medical History? But just to give you a quick background, and I won't go into the details, and I will say as much as this, that in order to really get the full story of A.S. Cyrus, as in the surgeon of A.S. Cyrus, you have to visit the museum, right? So what you're going to hear from me and what you're going to see in the journal is really just a snapshot of the collaboration between the Barbados Museum and Historic Society, but a snapshot of A.S. Cyrus himself, who is one of our famed, important Caribbean stalwarts in medicine, right? There are a few personalities that I would regard within that category of stalwarts, but A.S. Cyrus, for his contribution to surgery, and not only to surgery, but obstetrics and gynecology, ophthalmology, we say that he was the jack of all trades and master of all, right? His contribution was a stellar contribution, and his collection over the years was also a very stellar collection, right? Which to date, based on the collection that we have been able to preserve and have brought over to its new home in Barbados, in the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of West Indies, to date, we may not appreciate the full extent of the value of that collection. But what I want to highlight today is the immense gratitude of the faculty and the university to Alexandra Cummins for her leadership, her guidance, her support, and Bancroft, who was in the trenches with us. And when we reached out to Alexandra, there was never, ever a delay, less than half an hour, for her to respond to any query. And this is even when we reached out to her when she was busy traveling across the world. Different time zones. You know Alexandra as much as we do, but we see her as a remarkable individual, someone who doesn't sleep because she's able to respond whenever you ask a question, right? But her youthfulness, her exuberance, and her energy certainly has done the Barbados Museum Historic Society quite well among its other leadership. But we're grateful for that collaboration, and Alexandra, we're extremely grateful for your role in helping us to where we are now. But through our guidance, we have done quite a bit with that museum. We have launched it. It was launched in May 8th, 2025, that's last year. And we chose a very important time with the launch of the museum because we wanted to launch it when we were having a very regional, a very important regional meeting addressing health, which was the CARFA Health Conference. And we were able to do that. And we got a lot of our health dignitaries. We were able to get the support of the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines, not only to allow us to move the artifacts from where they were originally housed, which is in St. Vincent, and that is where A.S. Cyrus, the famed surgeon who the museum is named after, is from. We were able to get their support and approval to move those artifacts to Barbados, but we were also able to get their support by attending the launch to see this very historic occasion. Of course, none of this wouldn't have been possible without the support of the Cyrus family. So Lady Catherine Cyrus, who holds this museum, you know, at the center of her chest, deep in her heart, trying to uphold the legacy of her late husband, was very pleased, and she and her family were also able to be a part of this launch. So colleagues, I will not take up all of your time this morning to tell you about how the actual underground, in the trenches, initiatives between the Barbados Museum and Historic Society and the Faculty of Medical Sciences, and also persons outside of the faculty, because even Professor Cobley, before he retired fully from the University of the West Indies, he was also a part of that initial team that went to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, were in the trenches, who took a look at the collection itself, underscored the value of the collection, and made the necessary recommendations about what the University of West Indies was to do in terms of moving that collection to Barbados. So I'm very happy and very pleased that we were able to get that job done. It was a significant task. It was an initiative, a concept for 2 decades before it happened, right? So we in Barbados, we are grateful for this gift of the deed of this museum by the Cyrus family, but we are indebted to the Barbados Museum and Historic Society for their role in helping us to make this dream a reality. So I close my remarks here, colleagues, thanking the museum and inviting every one of us to visit the A.S. Cyrus Museum of Medical History, which is an important installment. It will help in capturing the Caribbean's narrative, and I want you to listen to that carefully, capturing the Caribbean's narrative of our medical history, which didn't start in 1948 when the University of West Indies started as a medical school, but we're going during colonial times, right? Historic, all the way back to chattel slavery in Barbados, when medicine was practiced with herbs and necromancers, among other things, right? I myself, I'm not a medical historian, but I am an ethnopharmacologist, and I have added to the to capturing some of that important commentary, Sir Woodville, that you mentioned, that is lost within this space, about our use of plants as medicines. And we're going all the way back to slave medicine, Jacobi, Andler, and even before, the indigenous people of the side of the world, before it was visited by the Europeans, right? And capturing that history, but also capturing other ancestral influences, such as the enslaved people from West Africa, the persons who were brought over during the period of indentured servitude after the abolishment of slavery, and their contribution to what we have in the Caribbean as the most multicultural, diverse space, which is actually recognized by UNESCO as potentially number 6 among the top 25 diverse species in the world. And that biodiversity also is a reflection of the various cultures that contributed to the Caribbean setting. Barbados has a very unique and important story, from the social sciences component, dealing with society and village life, as Sir Woodville has outlined, but as it relates to medicine, that story needs to be told. And we're happy that this museum will be able to channel that story to the wider public. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But I reserve this occasion to say thank you to the Barbados Museum and Historic Society for its contribution in making this dream a reality. Thank you.
Pleasant good morning to everybody. It's not often that a builder and an architectural technician gets to follow a noted historian and a doctor, but we'll certainly do our best in this regard. We're here just to speak a little bit about the article that some of you, we hope, will read, that speaks to the monument in Bridgetown, the monument to the Barbadian family in National Heroes Square. Myself and Hugh would have embarked on a journey in 2022 when we entered a call for designs that was sent out by the Ministry of Culture to design a monument that would be replacing the statue of Admiral Lord Nelson, which would have stood on that spot for quite some time. For Hugh and I, it was our second time around, as we had submitted a design for the 50th anniversary monument. And we have been lifelong friends from the time we were students at the Lord School. So we've known each other quite a while, and not just knowing each other as passers-by, but actually knowing each other as being in each other's house, our families, our friends, etc. So working together was not a challenge. It was just another one of those things that we've done together. But it was working together at a professional level. I am a chartered builder. Hugh is an architectural technologist, and we were happy to bring our unique perspectives and experiences to this process. We wanted to do and pay homage to this space, and obviously we wanted to make sure that we met the design criteria that was set out. We were fortunate in the regard that Sherwood McCaskey, through his television programs, were able to bring the Barbadian public along on the competition, what took place, interviews with the finalists and so on. So it was important, and I thought it was very good that the public were brought along that process, where they would have seen the entries that were submitted, would have gotten to hear some input from the designers, and then basically were brought right through to when the winners were proclaimed. Following that, we were then engaged as the designers on the project to bring it to fruition, which we did see as an honor. And we are happy that the design that you see there in town is as close to what we conceived in our original design. It was very important for us that the design as we designed it, forgive me, Professor, for alliteration there, but we were very strict on making sure what we designed was built. Let me put it that way. Too often, sometimes, you have the design and then you have what is built. Pick sense from nonsense, right? But we wanted to make sure that it was built to the design that we had submitted and that we wanted to bring the whole messaging in and around that design to the public of Barbados. So the article walks you through the research that we had to undertake as part of the project. It also walks you through the design concepts which you and I pored over for many, many days and hours. And it walks you through the actual building of the monument itself. Now, we are good in the works of doctors and lawyers in Barbados from the villages, Dr. Woodville Marshall, or those who have built our heritage of Barbados. There's really not a lot written about that. So we thought, both as professionals in the space, that means here that it was something that needed to be, placed in the history of Barbados, that persons can have an appreciation, and that when scholars in the future are doing research, when we are long gone, that there's something written that they could appreciate the concept that was put in and what it meant and how it was made and how it was done. So those are my brief comments. I'll just turn over to Hugh to have some brief comments now. Hughie?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First, let me just say it's been an honor to be included in this journal. As Vesa would have mentioned, we did put a lot of work into the article. I would say that this is the most comprehensive documentation of our journey in this monument that's written anywhere. So, and I think it's a fitting place for it to be recorded. When we first got the competition brief for this competition, it was a challenge. As you could imagine, the location of it alone was very intimidating. It's going to be the center of Bridgetown. And this is a very popular space, very well-known place for all of us as Barbadians. And being able to document the story of the Barbadian family, we felt it very important that we try to be as comprehensive as possible, try to not only think of it as perhaps as a, just a symbolic gesture, but we want to be able to include the different aspects of the Barbadian family since Barbadian families have existed. So we wanted to tell the story of the entire journey. And if you've seen the monument, we try to show aspects of different eras of the Barbadian family. So we first portray the ancestral Barbadian family from a different point of view that occupied that space for over 2 centuries. We wanted to tell it from a different point of view. The previous monument that would have been there would have told a different story. But we want to tell it from the story of the persons who would have struggled to fight for freedom for all Barbadians and not just for some. So we show that us represented as an ancestral family who pulled apart the shackles of slavery and ancestral oppression. But we also want to then show that how that made way for the new modern Barbadian family, which you see represented as a statue in the middle. And from that which we all, as Barbadians, are now products of. But we also thought it was very important, as it being in the space of National Hero Square, that we identify that the national heroes are the products of strong Barbadian families, both ancestral and modern. And so we wanted to be very comprehensive. We wanted to include every aspect of the Barbadian family and tell the story that not only that you can see from afar, but that you can go into it and be immersed in it and understand every aspect of it. So again, we want to thank you for the opportunity for being in this journal. We hope that you all would read and appreciate it. We don't expect everybody to agree with the monument. I know there will be some people who would love their concerns, but I think any good piece of public art do that. But I think it's important for us to have a conversation, to have a dialogue, and open up the landscape for us to be able to tell these stories and understand what we came from and where we're going. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Hugh Holder and Vincent Jones. And before we go, one last item. It is traditional to present the public library services in Barbados, as well as the contributors to the journal, with complimentary. Is the part of the program that we're at now. So I will first introduce our Deputy Director, Mr. Farmer. He will do the first few, but I believe he's got a meeting to run off to. And then, pardon me? Okay, and if he has to duck out and run away, our new marketing officer, Lana, will take over, and it will be a great opportunity for everyone to get to meet her. Thank you. So, if you will stand over there, Mr. Farmer, and these are the books, and I will call names. Yes. First, as is our legal requirement, we will start with the National Library Service of Barbados. I believe the representative is Ms. Beverly Archer. I am terrible with names, so I will not remember everybody's name, but I know Beverly quite well. Beverly, and a number of persons at the National Library Service remember me as a very, very young person coming there every Saturday morning and pestering the heck out of all of them. When they were not leaders of the service, but people maybe working the circulation desk. I was one of those nasty little children that would borrow a set of books at 9, and then borrow another set of books at 12, and then borrow another set of books at, just before I went through the door at 5, and then somebody sat me down and said, why don't you sit down and read, and then bring the ones you want to read at home at the end of the day. So that was me, very, very annoying. We would also like to call Miss Beverly Wood, who is representing the library of the University of the West Indies. Beverly is actually going to take 2 copies from us today, because she is also one of the journal's copy editors, and she is also receiving a copy in that role, which she performed admirably for us. She is the liaison librarian for the humanities faculty, if it's still called that, because I have difficulty keeping up with names of things at UE, unfortunately. But she certainly reviewed my thesis and did a bang-up job of it. And she has continued to do that for a number of people. I know there are lots of grateful people out there, and we at the Journal are grateful as well. I believe the representatives of the other library services will get theirs through the mail. Is anyone else here this morning? I don't want to leave anybody out. Right, I don't think so. So let's start with the authors. So we'll start, pardon me? Beverly was, I gave Beverly UAs, right. So Sir Woodville is showing me that he has his copy, and I am not letting him run away from the photo opportunity, so he's going to stand up and pretend he's getting it anyway. Please, and thank you, sir. He's going to just take the photo.
Yes, I know.
Oh, you're calling Lana?
No.
Oh. Right. So Woodville, longtime supporter of the museum, and also, not many of you may know this, a contributor to the strategic planning back in the 1980s when it was decided that the museum needed to really step up and represent with regard to being a national museum which represented the interests of Barbados. So we thank him for his service in that respect as well.
Ferguson is here.
Ernestine Library, if you can come please. Jackie, are you here? I did not see you come in. I am so sorry. Why did you not wave at me when I asked? So. Huh? Oh, sorry, Debbie. Sorry. I'm losing my librarians. Yes, I am getting older every day, that is true. It's been a pleasure working with Ferguson these last 2 years. They've been putting quite a bit of effort into infusing their programming with links to our history, heritage, and culture. My next author, Dr. Kohal. Dr. Kohal, should I send everybody's copies separately, or are you going to receive on behalf of your co-authors?
I'll receive on behalf of
Okay,
all.
so 4 copies to Dr. Kohal.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And if you have not been to this museum, I recommend that you visit. It's a very, very interesting place. Second only from a point of view of a scientific visit to our own children's gallery, shameless plug. And a quite different environment, but also that same scientific interest as it links back to our history as regional people, so it is well worth the visit. If I can ask Mr. Jones and Mr. Holder to come back up. Okay, Lana, if you can take over, please. Mr. Farmer is going to run after these two. Oh, well. Lana, come quick.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Say hi to Lana. We're going to be seeing her face a lot. It's 1 copy each, so there's another copy coming, yes. Marcia Nurse. It's right there. And after Mr. Nurse, Martin Cox. Ms. Nurse and Mr. Cox are the type of historians that continue to contribute and do ongoing research steadfastly year after year. And they're what we call some of our journal stalwarts. There's always something interesting and new to be learned from them. I don't want to forget anybody, so please wave at me. I see our librarian here for the Showstone Memorial Library, so come, Harriet, and receive on behalf of the library. And I believe Miss Hazelwork is somewhere here. And I believe that the BCC librarian did not make it, so we will give Miss Burke the copy for the library at the Barbados Community College, but Miss Burke is receiving on behalf of the History Department at the Barbados Community College. And if there are no further people present who, I I'm having difficulty peering into the crowd, so if you're here and I haven't seen you, like what happened with Debbie, please let me know now. Okay, that being the case, I would like to invite Ms. Chantel Thomas to give the vote of thanks. After which, I am sure you're absolutely anxious to, wait a minute, is that Dr. Peter? Dr. Peter, please come for your copy of the journal. But we need to present you with your copy of the journal. I don't understand how people like to sneak and run away from me. Is there anybody else hiding that does not want me to embarrass them by... Thank you. One more copy. Remind me what? Oh, sorry, Doctor. I don't know you very well. This is Dr. Sherwood, who would have done the review article on Colonel. Yes. I'm going to establish protocols because I cannot remember the order of those various titles, but the book written by our newly presented president. And now, Chantal will come and do the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kay, and good morning, all. I'm so happy to see you present here this morning. Thank you. As the Development Officer of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, it gives me immense pleasure to propose the vote of thanks on this event yet again, the launch of our annual journal. Today marks not just the release of a publication, a historic publication, but also the culmination of hard work, dedication, the pursuit of knowledge, and creativity of many individuals who have contributed to making this journal a reality. First and foremost, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to our acting editor, Dr. Alan Cobley. I had you as editor. For your remarks, sharing your inspiring thoughts, and giving us a brief insight into the articles of this year's journal. Your presence has made this occasion truly special. Our editorial team, for their meticulous efforts in curating a high-quality content, as usual. Your commitment, attention to detail, and the guidance have ensured that the journal maintains its standard of excellence. A sincere thank you to our authors and contributors. Without you, we would not have a journal. To you, we are deeply grateful for your insightful research, innovative ideas, and dedication to advancing knowledge in your respective fields. This journal stands as a testament to your hard work and scholarly rigor. Dr. Damien Kohal, nice to meet you. Dr. Sir Woodville Marshall, Hugh Holder, and Vincent Jones. Your presence and inspiring words, information shared at this event has added great value. Thank you. Our enduring gratitude and heartfelt thanks to our journal sponsors whose support makes this publication possible every year. I'm not sure if any sponsors are in the audience, but thank you to Chancery Chambers, Harris Paints Limited, Goddard Enterprises, Consumers Guarantee Insurance, St. Nicholas Abbey, Carter's General Store, West Indies Rum Distillery Limited, Oran Limited, Foursquare Distillery, Southpaw Graphics, Clyde B. Jones Funeral Home, Blue Horizon, and our own Garrison Grog, Barbados Museum. Cop Printery, we can't forget, the Cop Printery team who has been printing the journal for the past few years. We thank you for your support and continued commitment. A special thanks to the organizing team and support staff whose tireless efforts behind the scenes, from planning this event to coordinating the publication process, have made this launch seamless and memorable. To you, our esteemed guests and attendees, thank you for joining us today and sharing in this celebration. Your presence inspires us and reaffirms the importance of our collective pursuit of knowledge. Last but not least, thank you to Ms. Kay Hall, our education officer, education and outreach, who so tirelessly championed this publication annually. Thank you, Kay. In addition to Kay, those that worked alongside her and gave their dedication, Jewel Ford and Beverly Wood. Thank you. Tao Howard is our Leo artist. That was part of the editorial team, just to name a few of them, that had worked tirelessly to get this publication in as close to on time as possible. On behalf of the Council, the subcommittees and staff of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, Alessandra Cummins, our Director, our Deputy Director, I extend their sincere gratitude to everyone who contributed to this milestone. We look forward to your committed support as we strive for greater heights in years to come. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing most of you back here next year.
Later this year.
All right, later this year. We're launching in December 2026.
Okay.
Yeah. November.
It was me off camera telling her tell all the time and being like an earwig in her ear. But that journal cover that you see with that outline of Pedro and Carl set against the backdrop of the national colors of Barbados, that was entirely Tao's idea, her design and her execution. And we were blown away by it, hence why I was there off camera going Tao, because I think it is a very fitting cover for this year's journal. Thank you, everyone.